Time for 10 with Tim. Each Monday through Friday at 10 o'clock, we take about 10 minutes and we dig into the Word of God. Right now, we're going verse by verse through the Gospel of John. And today we're doing chapter 9, all of chapter 9, verses 1 to 41. This is just the most interesting and beautiful story ever. I love it. This is the healing Jesus' healing of the man born blind. And as I've told you, for those of you who like to read really closely, you might try outlining this chapter. Most scholars recognize that the author of the Gospel of John loves the number 7, and this chapter instantly just sort of divides itself in these 7 scenes. It's quick moving, but it's an amazing story. It all centers around this man born blind. Now the story begins, verse 1. Jesus was walking along and he saw a man who had been born blind, blind from birth. It's interesting because Jesus sees a man. Nobody else in this whole chapter is going to see a man. The disciples don't see a man. They see an issue to discuss. They see a theological puzzle. They see a question to ponder. Jesus, what about this man here born blind? Why would he be born blind? Was it something that he did, like a sin? And that's like, what? Like, they're asking if he could have possibly, committed a sin in utero. Is this something that he did? Or is it like punishment for his parents? Like, how do you explain? Why would God ever let a baby be born blind? But understand, he's sitting right there. He's sitting right there, but they don't see him. They don't engage him. He's just an issue to them. And there's a whole sermon I could preach right there for the church, because in a lot of ways, we treat people like issues. We talk about issues of sexuality and issues of poverty, and we somehow don't see the people that are there right in front of us. We would just rather sit back and ponder the questions and discuss the issues, but that's not what Jesus does. So if the disciples want to sit back and, ponder the question of why would this man be born blind, notice that Jesus doesn't even take on their question. Jesus doesn't even begin to answer the question of why. Instead, Jesus sort of switches the question to, what happens next? What happens now? It's not trying to explain what happened. Because here's the thing, in the spiritual life, in the life of faith with the Lord, what has happened is never, ever as important as what happens next. And so Jesus shifts the emphasis from what happened to this man to what happens next. And what happens next is going to bring God glory. So in your own life, what has happened is never as important as what happens next. That's the eyes of faith, right? And so Jesus instructs the man. Jesus is going to heal the man, right? But he heals him in a strange way. He tells him to put mud in his eyes and then go wash in the pool of Siloam. Siloam means sin, right? And so the man puts mud in his eyes, right? And then goes to the pool of Siloam. Why does Jesus do it this way? Well, it's interesting because in doing it this way, and first applying mud to his eyes and then walking away and getting his healing at the pool, some distance away, what happens is that Jesus sort of guarantees that this man will receive his sight, but he won't see Jesus. You see the strategy of this? Now remember, in the Gospel of John, there's this tension between seeing and believing. And so far, everyone has seen and they believe. They see the signs and they believe. But this is going to break that cycle. Because understand, by the time we get to the end of the Gospel, Jesus is going to be blessing those who believe without seeing. All right, so here's an example right here. This man is going to receive his miracle. He's going to get his physical sight, but he won't see Jesus. And that sets the story in motion. So by the time the man actually gets his physical sight, Jesus is long gone. But of course, everybody else in the world is curious. They want to know what happened because they've known this man all of his life. They've seen him. He's a, prominent blind person. Everybody's known him, and they've known that this man has never had sight, and suddenly he shows up seeing. Obviously, the Pharisees aren't going to like this, and they don't. So much of this story goes back to the Pharisees calling him in for a question, calling him back in for a question, calling his parents in for a question, right? I mean, they're going to get to the bottom of this. Who did this? How did he do this? It's just an amazing and in some ways distressing story. The neighbors and all the people who knew this blind beggar, they want to figure out why does he can see. But do you notice something that's completely missing from all of their interrogations, all of their wonder? Do you understand what's missing here? It's joy. It's just joy. If you had a friend who all of your life had been blind and all of the sudden they received this miracle, that dream come true, if they're a true friend, how could you not be excited for them? But there is absolutely no celebration here. Not even from the man's mama. Like, not even his mama. Nobody's happy for him. Nobody gets happy for him. How do you explain that? Well, I don't know how to explain it. I mean, there's something profoundly wrong with people. There's something profoundly wrong with people. But in the Christian life, understand, nobody's really going to understand what Jesus has done for you if they don't know Jesus. I mean, if they don't know Jesus, they're never going to understand what he's done for you and what he means to you. I mean, that's just a principle. They're never going to understand it. And so you got to tell your story. And this man here, the man who's now got sight, the man born blind, who Jesus has healed, this man is going to tell a story. And in that way, he becomes something of a model for us. He just tells a story. I don't know what to tell you. I once was blind, but now I see. I mean, he just tells a story. And the beautiful part about the way he tells it is that he never lets what he doesn't know about Jesus keep him from telling what he does know. I don't know how he did it. I just know what he did. He never lets what he doesn't know keep him from telling what he does know. Now, right there, y'all, I mean, that's a sermon. I mean, that is a life lesson for me and you. You and I need to be telling our story. If you've got a story, if you know Jesus, you've got a story. And you need to tell your story to the people who don't know Jesus, because how else are they going to know him, right? So again, they keep calling him back. And as you notice, this man starts out, kind of timid. He starts out, he tells the story. But every time he tells it, it gets shorter and shorter and shorter. I mean, you can just feel his frustration. And I just love it. I love the way this man develops and evolves. And to the point where finally he's looking at the Pharisees and he says, do you want to be his disciples too? Why do you keep asking me? Do you want to be his disciples? Do you want to follow him too? And they explode with rage. And notice what happens in verse 34. They throw him out of the synagogue. Now, this detail is important because this is exactly what's happening for those who would have first read the Gospel of John. For John's initial audience, this is their situation. They are now confronting the anger of the Jews, and they're beginning to be put out of the synagogue. So in that way, this man represents what you do and what Jesus does for the ones who are put out of the synagogue. So again, let me wrap up. At the end of the story, scene 7, right? Jesus comes back around and he finds the man. Now, I love that. Jesus comes back and finds him. Why does he do that? Why does Jesus come back around now after this man has been put through so much? Jesus comes back around for a private moment. Why? So that the man can see him. You understand? So that the man can see him. Because spiritual blindness is much more devastating than physical blindness. And the man now has his physical eyes, but he needs to have his spiritual eyes opened. It's not enough to get your eyes back, right? This man needs saving faith. And so Jesus comes back around and gives him exactly what he needs so that the man can have saving faith. You understand? So Jesus comes back to the man and says, do you want to believe in the Son of Man? Do you believe in the Son of Man? And the man says, who is he? I want to believe in him. And Jesus says, you have seen him, the one who's speaking to you. And the man says, yes, Lord, I believe. And he worships Jesus. Do you see that? Do you see how his faith develops? He believes in Jesus before he sees him, and that's going to be something of a model for all the rest of us who are going to have to learn to walk by faith and not by sight. You got it? I love that chapter. Isn't that good? It's just so good. It's just very different from what we've been reading in the Gospel of John, but I love it. And I love the way it unfolds in 7 scenes. And if you have any questions about that, maybe I'll drop that in the comments for you guys who really want to know what are the 7 scenes. We'll break it down for you in the comment section. For tomorrow, read chapter 10, verses 1 to 21. Chapter 10, verses 1 to 21, we're going to get down to Jesus as the Good Shepherd. This is good stuff. John chapter 10, verses 1 to 21. Tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock, Lord willing, I will see you there. Have a happy Tuesday, you all. I love you so much. Stay in the Word,